Today we have Dr. Mark Campbell, who is the CTO of Unitrends. Mark?
Hi, thanks, Katie. So we're going to do a real quick, really informal presentation today on why 321 backup sucks. This was inspired by talking to someone who ended up becoming a customer of Unitrends, but he was talking to a competitor one day, and he called one of our sales guys, and I ended up getting on the phone, and he said something about 321 backup, and I said, 321 backup sucks. And I explained why that was the case, and he said, you really ought to do a blog on that. And so we did a blog. It was so popular that then we were asked to do a presentation on it. So that's where we got to from here. So with all that said, let's first get through some basics, right? What's the 321 backup strategy? All right, all it is 3 total copies of data, 2 copies local on different media, 1 copy offsite. Really, really simple. And you know what? If you've got a PC in your office and you copy that over to let's say your local Dropbox, and you also copy it to a USB stick, you've pretty much done 321 backup. You've got a backup copy. You've got another copy on different media, and Dropbox will replicate it off to the offsite. And this is a visual description of 321 backup. 1 production copy with 2 backup copies. You've got these 2 media types. The first media is typically disk these days, although it could be tape, it could be the USB stick. The second media is typically the tape, though, and that disk, or it can be NAS or SAN in what's called a fixed archiving strategy. The point is, right, 2 different devices. Some people will say it's just 2 devices, but strictly speaking, 321 is 2 different media. And then 1 is an offsite copy. Now, what's hot these days? It's cloud, because cloud reduces your operational expense. But the truth is, we have small customers that keep their offsite copy in their car trunk. We have people who keep it in their back bedroom, in their closet. They're using this advanced technology known as SneakerNet, i.e. they walk it somewhere. If you're a really small company and you've got more time than you have IT dollars to spend, it's not a bad strategy. But that's all it is. There's nothing magical to 321. It's a good basic strategy that was created decades and decades ago. So does it really suck? As you could probably guess, this is a controversial title that came from me on the phone saying, yeah, that sucks, and then explaining it. But the truth is, it doesn't really suck. Look, if your mom or your dad calls you and says, hey, I want to make sure my photos are protected, and they're really, really valuable photos, then you very well might tell them to hook up their iPhone or their Android to their computer, back it up to their PC, and also use the iCloud. The trouble with it is that for businesses, where downtime is increasingly an issue, where you can't afford to be, let alone missing your data, you can't afford to be without your data for hours or days. It's just a little bit dated. So let's look at a few alternatives to 321 at an architectural level, and then let's talk about the elephant in the room, the big issue that the 321 backup strategy doesn't address. So in looking at a few more modern alternatives, you've got what we call the 312. 312 is actually not that rare. It means that you've got a production copy and 2 backup copies with 1 on disk, and the other one is moved off-site. Now, some people use what's called a 311 strategy. So they might have 2 backup appliances or 2 backup software at 2 different locations, and they back up to one location and then they replicate to the other location. we actually suggest, and you'll see this with, for example, our cloud, Unitrends cloud, that you make sure to pick a cloud vendor that has more than a single site, that is geographically replicated, or what's called geo-replicated sometimes. So here, in this kind of architecture, you see a disk-to-disk backup, then you see a replication to an off-site copy, and then typically there's geo-replication to a second. It might be bi-coastal, it could be 2 continents for that matter, or it could be any 2 data centers that are located at least a couple of 100 miles apart, so the same tornado or the same hurricane doesn't wipe them out. Here's a little bit more advanced strategy. This is a 3-2-2. You've got 3 data copies. You've got 2 media types. One can be disk. The other one can be some kind of rotational or fixed environment. So let me give you an example from Unitrends. What we'll have is we'll have one of our software appliances or hardware appliances, and it will do the backup. When it does the backup, the user will then direct an archive to occur. An archive is just a backup copy. And so they'll make a backup copy to a second rotational disk or to a tape. About 5% of our customers use tape. But it can also be just a fixed NAS or SAN, a Drobo or a Synology sitting out there that someone archives to. Now, we have customers that will take those disks or those tapes or even a Drobo NAS, put it in the trunk of their car. These are small customers, and that's their whole strategy. But as you get a little bit bigger and more sophisticated user, in addition to doing that archiving, they will also replicate to an off-site copy, and they'll keep, if they're using a cloud, they'll keep 2 geographically separated copies in the cloud. So that's a 3-2-2. As you can tell, right, the 3-1-2 and the 3-2-2 both give you more protection than a traditional 3-2-1, which again is not the worst thing in the world if you're protecting iPhone camera photos. But if you're protecting critical business data, you probably want to use a 3-1-2 or a 3-2-2 kind of approach. Finally, what we got here is and believe it or not, the larger the customer, the more likely they are to use this kind of strategy. They'll have 1 production copy, 2 backup copies, but they'll use 2 media types, and we've already talked about that. They'll use the cloud up in number 1 and number 2. Up here, the first and second off-site copy will be in a cloud, but they'll also use a tape rotational service, or even, and again, not many people put these kind of things in the trunk of their car, but they can keep it in a locked box, a fireproof vault, or somewhere either on-premise or off. You might say, well, isn't this kind of overkill? Well, yeah, but what's happening is that increasingly people understand that it's not just natural disasters, right, that they have to worry about. Man-made issues, hacking from not just outside but inside with things like ransomware are increasingly problematic. And what they're doing is they're hedging bets. They're decreasing risk. And so in this kind of 3-2-3 environment, you don't have a whole lot of risk of losing that data. So that's why you'll see bigger, more sophisticated companies use a 3-2-3 strategy. So each one of these is better than the traditional 3-2-1 backup strategy. But how do we get to best? Well, to get to best, you have to change your perspective. And so that's what this little photo is trying to get across, is that you have to kind of look at things with a new lens. You have to start with continuity. Now, continuity, it's one of those, multi-syllable words, all fancy, not nearly as simple as backup, but it's pretty easy. Continuity simply means that rather than worrying about, is my data protected somewhere, you basically say, I know my data is protected. How quickly can I bring my business back up? How long do I have to wait? Because, for any of you who came up in past years and you've used tape as a primary backup mechanism, tape's not all that bad. It used to be kind of unreliable, but with the recent LTO 5s and 6s and thereon, it's gotten more reliable. The trouble is it takes a long time to get your data back, and then even longer to get your systems back. And then finally, even longer to get your whole infrastructure back, right? Getting back one server these days is a big challenge versus, what was going on a couple of years ago, but it's not nearly as big a challenge as getting 100 servers up and getting them up in order so that you're back up and running without downtime. So that's why you got a first step. Your first step is to really think through continuity. So when we talk about continuity, and by the way, I use these simple flat design, blue and green slides because I could show you tons and tons of complicated stuff. But at the end of the day, it's really not rocket science. It's really pretty simple. Businesses have three basic choices for continuity. You can buy equipment, hire people, and you can use a second location. And a lot of big companies do, right? This is the essence of SAN replication, for example. And if you've got, a pretty big IT budget, two locations that are far enough apart, and a big old budget to train a lot of people, it's not a bad approach at all. Unitrends supports this. Unitrends allows you to take two physical appliances or pieces of backup software and to protect two different locations and to replicate between them. And that allows you to get continuity because we allow you to spin up your environment without having to do a physical recovery. We allow you to spin up using something called instant recovery very quickly at whatever location is protecting the other location. And remember, Unitrends and other vendors allow you to do cross-replication. And what that means is that if one goes down, the other one can spin up doing instant recovery, which means you don't have to pull all the data off a tape or even off the disk. You just use the magic of virtualization to spin up that other environment you were protecting, and vice versa. So that works, and you want to make sure that your vendor supports that and supports all three of what we're going to talk about. So what else can you do, right? Well, if you don't have two locations or you don't have a lot of money to spend on IT staff, then you can, from one location or multiple locations, use a cloud, right? And when you use a cloud, you've got a couple of choices. Your biggest choice is, are you going to use a single vendor for your backup and continuity cloud, or are you going to pick a single vendor? There are advantages. I'm trying to think of the advantages of two vendors. It's difficult, but if you really like one cloud vendor and another backup vendor, that's the advantage. You can pick whichever one you want. The advantage to picking a vendor with both a cloud, continuity cloud, and backup is that it's the old negative way of saying it, one throat to choke. One vendor, much simpler kind of deployment. So notice that cloud isn't just for small businesses. One of the things we've noticed is that we do a lot of $100,000 plus deals, and we're getting a lot of cloud purchases for $100,000, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of terabyte protected deals. And the reason is that even multi-site companies, it's hard to find IT staff these days. It's hard to find people who are trained. And so they're looking to offload not just the capital expenditure, but the operational expenditure into the cloud. So whatever happens, you want to make sure that you choose a vendor that can handle both both a single site cloud deployment and a multi-site cloud deployment. Now, in terms of continuity clouds, you've got three primary choices again. I'm just going to use Unitrends here. I'm from Unitrends, but one is the vendor's cloud if the vendor offers a cloud. So in this case, in our case, we offer something called Unitrends Cloud. It's 10 cents a gigabyte a month for protected storage, no charge on retention. You get spin up, in other words, continuity, instant recovery through the cloud with a 1 hour SLA. We actually do it a lot quicker than 1 hour, but 1 hour is the contractual guarantee. And that works with our on-premise backup appliances and backup software. So that's one option. But you've also got the option of being a service provider or working with a service provider on a cloud they build. This is actually a big growth area for Unitrends. This is called a cloud service provider, or sometimes called a managed service provider cloud. And that's what we mean by created by MSPs, managed service providers, CSPs, cloud service providers, and SSPs is a new term that CRN just coined, strategic solution providers. But you know, if you've got a MSP, a managed service provider, or a local cloud vendor that you do a lot of work with, this is an awesome solution. We actually supply our backup software that we use to build our cloud to these managed service providers who build their own. And again, you get seamless interaction with our on-premise backup software and backup appliances. And then finally, you know, you kind of have to have your head buried in the sand and not be aware of AWS, Google, and Azure, and SoftLayer / IBM, and all the other hyperscale clouds. The advantage to these clouds, believe it or not, isn't price. These are actually kind of expensive clouds for backup. Why do I say that? Why are they expensive? Because if you're familiar with AWS, the compute engine called EC2 and the storage called EBS, or Elastic Block Storage, costs literally thousands and thousands of dollars per terabyte per month. The advantage, right, is that these are big old companies with worldwide cloud infrastructure. So we do have people who call us and say, you know, hey, you know, we know your cloud does spin up, we know Amazon doesn't, but we just want to use Amazon. Do you support it? And that's what this slide's about. It's our opinion, it's my opinion, that you want to make sure that your vendor supports what you care about. So while I'll tell you that Unitrends Cloud is less expensive and does a better job of spinning up physical and Hyper-V and VMware machines than AWS or Azure, the truth is we support all three, the service provider cloud, the Unitrends cloud, and the Hyperscale cloud. And we support all three because at the end of the day, the buyer and, of course, our partner that we work with, that ability for them to choose what they want is paramount to us. So this is a little bit of an incomplete slide. Sorry about that. But the heart of the presentation is that when you think about 321, you need to start thinking about continuity, not just backup. And this last slide before I spend just a couple minutes talking about Unitrends is the way that you want to think about continuity in a cloud. Everyone knows about storage, but you also want to make sure there's a DRAS layer, something to spin up. What do we mean by spin up? All we mean is that if your Windows server or your VMware server or your Hyper-V server, for example, if they go down, if one server goes down, one virtual machine goes down, or if you lose the whole facility, you want to make sure that you can spin that virtual machine up quickly. What do I mean by quickly? Well, the technologies today allow it to be done in a matter of just a few minutes. But make sure your cloud vendor gives you an SLA, a service level agreement. Because I get lots of customers from competitors who say, yeah, they said it would take 6 seconds, and it literally took 6 hours before I gave up. And that's why SLAs are so important. There's a technology, and we're not going to dive deep into this today, but there's a technology called recovery assurance. The best way to think about recovery assurance, and it's pretty simple, is that when you do a backup and you send that backup to the cloud, what happens to it? Well, 99 times out of 100, nothing. You just do another backup and then another backup, and those things go into retention and you never use them. If you use recovery assurance, it not only makes sure that you can spin up, in other words, that your recovery point objective and your recovery time objective are met, but it actually can tell you what your recovery time actual is. Minute or day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, every time you send something, you do a backup, you spin it up and you make sure that it works. And you make sure it works, not only can you spin up and see a challenge screen for a Windows server, you make sure that your Exchange is working with your SharePoint, which is working with your Active Directory domain. You make sure that your Oracle server that relies on the Linux, separate Linux virtual machine, that they all work together, that you get true one-click recovery, and that you absolutely guaranteed you can spin up whole environments. That's what recovery assurance is about. And then finally, you want to make sure that your management and your support layer. You know, it's easy for continuity vendors. Unitrends, that's who we are as a continuity vendor. It's easy for us to say, yeah, we got great tools, we got great software. You want to make sure when it's 3 a.m. in the morning, you got 5 hours to go until the plant opens, and you've just lost your 3 most important servers in some kind of Halon accident. By the way, every time I give an example, it's a real-life example of what's happened to our customers. You want to make sure that you can get spun up at a different location, and you want to make sure that that spin up, that someone's got your back. And that's what we mean by not just having a service level agreement, but by having worldwide, world-class support to help you get back up. So that's it for 321. I'm going to very quickly go through Unitrends, and then we'll answer any questions you might have. Unitrends, what we're about is we do radically simple, cloud-empowered, all-in-one continuity solutions. That's a mouthful, right? So think of us as a continuity platform. That's all we are. We're about continuity. We protect over an exabyte, maybe over 2 exabytes. This is a little bit of a dated slide of customer data. We have 14,000 customers, 8,000 partner affiliates. Worldwide headquarters is in Boston. That's where I'm talking to you from right today. Our European headquarters is in London, and we've got other locations throughout the world. Remember earlier I was saying that a lot of people, even if you had multi-site, they were choosing the cloud. This chart is why. Over the 10-year period, and this was an IDC Digital Universe study, we're seeing 50x growth in data, 10x growth in servers, both virtual and physical, and only 50% growth in IT admins. What does that mean? Well, first, tell your children to be computer professionals, because their skills versus the need, the gap is growing. Secondly, it means that fewer and fewer IT admins have to protect more and more stuff. And again, that's what this company, Unitrends, is about. And by the way, though, with all of that said and all this focus on continuity, I love this slide. DRJ and Forrester asked back in almost 10 years ago, they said, were you able to recover from your most recent disruption in less than an hour? In 2007, 30% people said, oh yeah, absolutely. 2010, it dropped to 13%. In the last survey that we have access to, I think another one's coming out this year, but in 2013, it was 2%. Now, part of that's because the data's growing, but another part of that is because things are getting more complicated. And if you don't have recovery assurance technology, if you're not going beyond RPO and RTO to RTA, to real-time actual, if you're not spinning up in an automated, orchestrated fashion automatically your environment, then how in the heck do you think you're going to be able to take 100 virtual machines and get back up in an hour, let alone 1,000 or 10,000? This is our brag page. Lots of awards from lots of people. We're really proud of the #1 virtual software at DCIG and the #1 virtual backup appliance. When I met Jerome Wendt, who runs DCIG at VMworld last year, I met him for the first time. He said, you know, everybody thinks that, you know, you guys pay us for all these great reviews. And he goes, this is the first time I've ever met you, Mark. And I said, you know, me too, thanks. And I would love to say we had a beer, but I think we had a Diet Coke and then moved on to the show. You can try us out. One of the great things about this company, in fact, it's one of the things I love about the company, is our software is so simple that we don't need a bunch of professional services people to help you get it installed and running. Now, we got evaluation groups if your environment's complex. We got partners who will help you. But the truth is, both of my kids, who are, one is in computers and one isn't, when they turned 18 a few years back, I had them both download our software, install it, and run it to make sure that it was as simple as we thought. So intuitive, powerful, and yet sophisticated software. And this is what our customers say. And Clandis is over Lincoln Memorial's quote, 160 pounds of backup awesomeness. That just so happens to be what one of our larger machines, 100 terabyte server backup appliance weighs. So I didn't understand it when he first told it to us, but then I got goosebumps after he said it. So that's it. I'm now going to turn it back over to Katie to see if anybody had any questions.
Mark, we actually have had quite a few questions that have come into the queue today. Just in the interest of time, we're going to try to get through these as quickly as possible. One that just came in from Adam is, what are the costs of moving data out of the cloud? I've heard it has a high cost. Does that mean there's a cost associated with resource?
I'm sorry, the last word, does that mean it's a cost associated with?
Resource.
Oh, resource. Okay. So there's some blog posts, and by the way, I get in trouble every time I do this, guys. My email is Campbell, like the soup, at unitrends.com, and I'm on Twitter and all of that. But if you just get Campbell at unitrends.com, you can email me any questions. And of course, all the marketing people got mad at me because I just bypassed all their systems. So let me real quickly answer. We have a lot of blog posts that we actually build out cloud cost calculators. We show everything I'm about to say in detail, and we also talk about it qualitatively. But the problem with AWS and Azure is that they're awesome general-purpose cloud platforms. The trouble is backup and continuity is a little bit different. In other words, what you want to do in a continuity platform is you want to be able to take on huge amounts of data and charge very little for that, but then be able to spin up at any time. But you don't want to have to pay for that spin up until you need it. So we design very specialized clouds. We have a 10 petabyte worldwide cloud in the US, Canada, UK, Germany, Australia, and I'll bet you I missed one. Our cloud is built to do continuity. Now, we also have software that will let you spin up VMware to AWS, and soon, we haven't announced it yet, but soon to be Azure. When we talk about the resource, it's how those clouds charge for resource versus a more designed continuity cloud. But again, look at our blogs, look at our cloud cost calculators, and contact me if you need any more information.
All right, our next question is recovery assurance only available in the cloud?
No. All of our software and all of our hardware that sits on your premise also supports recovery assurance. In addition, our cloud supports recovery assurance, and partners who are using who use Unitrends software to build their continuity clouds, they support recovery assurance. So all of whether it's our cloud, the partner cloud, and whether it's software or hardware on premise, recovery assurance is available throughout.
All right, next question is, what are the differences between the backup appliance and the software?
So the biggest difference is a big old chunk of hardware. And I know that sounds a little facetious, but it's actually true. If you're using it, you can't tell the difference. It's the same user interface. 99% of the functionality is the same. When I say 99%, the best example I always give people is we have software that operates on VMware, on Microsoft Hyper-V, and on bare metal or on Red Hat Linux. In the hypervisors, they don't give you access to eSATA from the virtual machine. And so archiving to eSATA is not available on the VMware and Hyper-V versions, and it is available on the Red Hat Linux version of software on all our hardware appliances. But believe it or not, that's about it. Every other function that is available. So the biggest difference, what we find is that we will go into shops and they say, look, I got all the hardware in the world. I got an old SAN over here. You know, I'm buying a brand new Nimble storage SAN, and my old EMC SAN, I mean, I don't know what even to do with it. And I've got servers and I don't need any more hardware. I just need some software. That's the guys that buy our software. We have other people who say, I'm a virtualized only shop. The last thing in the world I want to do is buy more hardware. I've got excess capacity. They buy our software. It's when someone says, you know what, my hardware is pretty old. I got a big old environment, or even a small one. I got 2 terabytes or 100 terabytes to protect, and I'm going to have to buy server and storage anyway. Those are the people that typically buy our physical appliances. So I just told you the buyer side piece. Technologically, same thing.
All right. What's the difference in recovery between Amazon Web Services versus the Unitrends cloud?
So in Amazon services today, for example, if you took one of our pieces of software, our physical appliance, and you were to hook that to Unitrends Cloud and AWS, which you can do. You can do both at the same time. Our cloud allows spin up and allows that recovery assurance, and our cloud doesn't charge you for retention. In other words, no matter how many copies of data you end up putting up there, we only charge you for the first copy. So that's kind of the advantages. In addition, the replication, in other words, the WAN bandwidth between our cloud and your premise is more efficient because we have software doing advanced WAN optimization in both places. Now let's say you're going to Amazon, and we support that. It is a relatively simple data in and data back out. You can push data to Amazon and you can push back out. And while we do deduplication to Amazon, that deduplication is usually less efficient to Amazon. Now, let's imagine that you said, okay, well, Mark, I don't want local backup. All I want is to back up straight to Amazon. We have a product called Boomerang that has, its deduplication up in your WAN isn't quite as efficient, but the advantage to it is that it uses S3, which is the lower cost object storage. It costs as little as slightly over a penny to 3 pennies. And if you use Boomerang, you can keep your backup copies in Amazon S3, and then only when you want to declare a disaster can you click a button, and then what happens is that you will spin up your VMware machine. It will convert it to an Amazon machine called an AMI, convert the vSwitch network to a CloudFormation network, that's an Amazon network, and you can boot up and go. And so that tool that we have is called direct replication, and it does allow that spin up. It doesn't do recovery assurance, but it does a very good job of that. So that's really the difference between local software going to both clouds and then Boomerang, which is a specialized product that is designed for direct replication. It doesn't go to Unitrends cloud, it only goes to Amazon, and again, soon to be Azure. If you're on this call and you love Azure and you want to know when Boomerang is going to be available, again, write me a note, and I'll get you enrolled in our beta program so that we can get you going, because we have about 100 beta customers today using our Boomerang with Azure.
This next question, I think we may have just kind of skipped over this a little bit, so I wanted to definitely bring this one up. One of the users is asking, when is Unitrends going to be able to back up physical servers? That's the most awesome question ever. So the answer is 1989. So I want to repeat that. Yeah. For all of you who were born after 1989, the company has always backed up physical servers. We protect over 200 versions of hypervisors, servers, storage, operating systems, and applications. We support physical Windows going all the way back to, believe it or not, Windows NT, Windows 95. And of course, we support the latest versions of Windows Server and Windows clients as well. And you can spin all of those up in a physical to virtual motion on our appliances. But by the way, folks, we support Linux, various distributions from Red Hat to Ubuntu to whatever. We support AIX, Solaris, HPUX, iSeries, Oracle, SharePoint, Exchange. We're not a niche company, and we're not a virtualization legacy company. In other words, we didn't build a company that was designed around virtualization, and now we have to figure out how to be heterogeneous. This is a company that from the bottom up has been built and honed around protecting your environment today, both virtual and physical, and what's coming in the future. I think we all know, right? Docker and containers are coming. And you can be assured that we've built a platform that's flexible and adaptable at the application, hypervisor, container, thread, operating system, server, and storage level. A couple of great questions have just come in. The first one is, do you recommend clouds for financial institutions? I do. I think that you have to be careful to make sure that as a financial institution, if you are subject to SARBOX, to Sarbanes-Oxley, or you have other regulatory, like FINRAG and other things, that you have to conform to, make sure that your cloud allows you to prove to your regulators that you are compliant. So for Unitrends Cloud, for example, and in fact for Amazon, and Azure as well, by the way, but Amazon's kind of taken a lead on this, you'll see that there are a lot of use cases for financial industries using those clouds. You want to make sure that you've got good encryption. You want to make sure that you understand your processes. Again, going beyond regulation, going beyond compliance, you want to make sure that your customers' data is safe, right? And financial information, along with health information, is some of the most important stuff in the world. So the answer is yes. The other point you want to make is, if you're using a dedicated cloud like Unitrends, it's a little bit easier to do what I'm about to say because the use case is simpler. But if you're using Amazon or Azure, just make sure that you lock down your solution. In other words, make sure that the what's called the attack surface area, where people can attack and try to get your data or to hurt you, is locked down so that it's more difficult to hack in. The one advantage to dedicated clouds is that attack surface is much smaller.
But in terms of compliance and regulation, the answer is yes. Yes, we recommend it. You want to check the regulatory and the compliance, and then you want to make sure you encrypt. And then finally, you want to make sure if you're using a general purpose cloud to really take someone who can take that attack perimeter and shrink it. I think everybody knows this, right? But AWS is kind of famous for people will do studies every now and then, and there's like 50,000 servers out there that are accessible with data. And that's what I mean by make sure that you got somebody who knows what they're doing in that cloud and can secure it if you use a general purpose cloud.
All right. Looks like we have time for maybe 2 more questions. The first one is, can the free software be paired with your Google offering? Or
Absolutely.
Your cloud offering?
Absolutely. We have something called Unitrends Free, and I'll explain real quickly the origin. So Unitrends is a big old company. It's bigger than you'd expect, and yet we don't have a lot of brand recognition. We focused all of our money on building great product and supporting customers, and not enough on marketing, obviously. So a year ago, we created something called Unitrends Free, which is a 1 terabyte protected backup. You can do continuity with it. You can spin up, you can back up VMware, Hyper-V, Windows, and you can push that data to a second site consisting of Google. We also support Amazon. Believe it or not, the only cloud we don't support today is our cloud, and we'll be remedying that in the next few months. But the answer is yes, you can take Google Cloud Platform and easily take your account, take our free software, configure those together, and you will have a DR solution, a disaster recovery solution, with local continuity.
All right, and then this looks like it's going to be our last question that we have time for today. Could we continue to use an existing Unitrends appliance if we wanted to pursue cloud-based at some point?
Yes. The way that we're approaching the cloud is as a hybrid solution. And so what I mean by that, it's a fancy term, but all it means is that today the fastest growing part of Unitrends business is the Unitrends cloud portion. And we always sell, if you have an existing appliance today and you want to use Unitrends Cloud, we can get you going in just a few minutes. You just have to call us and we'll get you set up and going. But even, we have customers with appliances that are 7 years old. And I think the oldest appliance that is using the cloud right now is probably 6 years old. But our old appliances, our new appliances, our hardware, our software, all of those things work with our cloud. So whether you have old stuff, you just bought new stuff, or you're thinking about upgrading, and you want to build a DR solution with a cloud, we got you covered.
All right, well, we want to thank everybody for their time and interest in today's presentation. We will be sending out a recording to everyone on today's call just so that you can share this with your coworkers at your leisure. And we do look forward to following up with each and every one of you after we end our session today. Thank you and have a great afternoon.